Hello everybody, and welcome to part 2 of building the HK 148 scale B-17 series. In part 2, we're going to focus on interior construction up to the cockpit, and in part 3, we'll focus on the cockpit, interior detailing that area, as well as the navigator and bombardier areas. So, without further ado, let's get started.
I've got the aft end of the fuselage area both glued and taped up to check the fit. And let's go ahead and start with the rear landing gear assembly, which is actually one piece, and this bulkhead. This glues in place fairly easily. However, it's too wide on this side, so you got to sand this down, and these ribs need to be cut down a little bit or sanded down in order to have this area close up okay on the fuselage. On this bulkhead here, it glues in place okay. However, this side is too wide, and it causes a split in the bottom here. So you got to sand this down a little bit, probably about a 1/16 of an inch, and then that'll close up okay. So I glued this in place and then form fitted this, and then I sanded this down. It was already glued in place, and so I just used a heavy-duty sanding stick like this to close it down, or to cut it down a little bit so that the fuselage will close up okay. The rear deck goes in place okay, and it sits right on these two pieces right here. You can see this little cup here. It sits right on here. And it doesn't cause any interference problems, so that's okay. And then you've got these parts which all go back here. You've got the two large ammo boxes which fit on these two stubs, and the machine guns, and the pedestal for this machine gun, which is how it's actually designed. There's little insertions here. The problem is that there's a little bit of wiggle room here. Okay, so the problem you're going to have is when you assemble this and then put the barrels through this end, they may not line up. So what I did was I glued this back piece in place on this side so that as I assemble this, I can position these barrels, or the base of the guns, so that the barrels will fit through here and slide into these holes. So I think that'll work fairly well. There's a lot of parts back here, most of which you're not going to see. This is an armor plate, and it goes, let me pull this out and show you. It sits like this, but you have to set it back like this. It's got to be skewed back. Otherwise, it causes an interference problem with the sides of the fuselage. However, there's a piece missing. On the actual part, there's the armor plating here, and then there's a glass plate that comes up here, which they didn't provide for you. So I may or may not install this. But if you don't set it right, it's going to cause an interference problem. So the way I would do it would be to tape all this together like I had, and then glue this in place with a drop of Tester's glue, close up the fuselage so that you can adjust it a little bit so that it doesn't cause an interference problem. So those are my comments for the area back here. And like I said, once the fuselage is closed up, you're not going to see hardly any of this. So there you have it. I've got all the main components for the radio compartment put in place, and couple things here. First off, both the HKF and the HKG have this pedestal for a 50 cal. This is only accurate for the G model. The F model did not have it here, which is right here on the bulkhead. It was further up. When they started manufacturing the G series, they moved the 50 caliber to here. So my point is, when you're building the F model, you need to remove this. The instructions neglect to tell you that. The other thing is that you can see how this bulkhead is skewed a little bit, and it's because this is slightly too wide. So you're gonna have to be really, really careful how you do this. What I would recommend is you build the bomb bay first and then insert it in place, and then you can insert this in place. So there is a positioning tab right here, and I tried to straighten this out a little bit, but it really, it can be done just like that. So you're gonna have to be careful how you position this. Otherwise it's gonna look strange. Now, you're not gonna see anything from here back. So if you don't paint this side, it's no big deal. You're not gonna see it. These two pieces here, this is the walkway around the ball turret and the framing for the ball turret. They fit better if you slide them in place. There's a set of pins here and here and here for these two parts. I would cut off the positioning tabs, slide them in place, glue them in place, and then that makes this easier to insert down here. And then you can put some super glue beads on the underside here to make this real strong. I tested the fit, and this bulkhead do not interfere at all with the placement of the other side of the fuselage. Neither does this. So those are my thoughts on this. And there's just, it's going to be a problem putting this in place, and I may end up just cutting the positioning tabs off on both sides and just sliding this down. So while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go ahead and mark this location right here, so I know approximately where it goes. This bulkhead is straight, this one is not. So, and that may be a problem with the ribbing on the inside. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but back here, like I said, you're better off cutting the positioning tabs and gluing these pieces in place separately, which is what I'm going to do. And then this bulkhead will slide in easily. So those are my thoughts on this, and so we'll proceed. And what I'm going to do is I will, like I said, glue these two pieces in place with some super glue. But first I'll cut the positioning tabs off. The other thing is, the positioning tab for this one shares a hole with the positioning tab at the deck back here. And so you got to really push them in place to get them to fit right. But the big thing is removing this tab here. I've got the ball turret framing glued in place, and as I said, I went ahead and cut off the positioning tabs here and here, sanded it smooth, and then glued these two pieces in place securely with some super glue. And this lower one, it tends to pop up a little bit, so you kind of have to hold it down and put a little bit of medium set super glue right along here. And let me get that better, right along here, and that solved that problem. So when you go to put this bulkhead in place, now it will just go in place like this. And then, see, I've got these marked here, so I keep the paint off of them with a little bit of tape, and then I can just glue it from the underside here and just make it nice and strong. So let's see if I can get to this. Here we go. I'll put a little bit of glue here, and then a little bit of glue here, and that'll be it. It'll be nice and strong. So that fixes that problem. Now just got to work on the area in here and on the other side of the fuselage. I've got the decking and the platform for the 50 cal glued into place, and the instructions are not really clear as to where they go, but this is exactly, this deck end is supposed to be level with this walkway right here, which sets it around the ball turret. So, and the framing on this decking sits to the right of the fuselage framing. And this platform for the 50 cal, it sits right in this location here. So took a little bit to figure that out, because like I said, it's not real clear in the instructions where it goes. So one of the other things I did was, there's a hole here for the vertical stanchion for the 50 cal, and I made that a little bit bigger with a 0.039 inch drill bit, because the 50 cal stanchions, the locating pin is very, very tiny, and it causes the machine gun to just kind of flop over. So what I did was I added 30 thousandths diameter rod to the tip here with some super glue, and that worked really well. So now when I go to glue it, and I'll use some Tester's glue to do that, see if I can get it in there, it'll sit just like this, and that white piece comes out the bottom, but you're not going to see that. So now I've got some working time. So yeah, it's going to look pretty good. So I did that for both machine guns. And that worked out really well. So again, it was a 0.039 bit. And so now that'll be much more secure and stronger. So yeah, we're done with this. Now there's other parts that go in here, but they have to be sprayed separately. The ammo box is a wood color. Same thing up here, the ammo boxes are wood colors, and back here. So we are, I think we're ready. I just got to do a double check, but I think we're ready to go ahead and prime the interior after I go ahead and tape all the locations where I don't want to have to scrape paint off all around the bottom here, and the locations for the bulkheads. But yeah, we're looking pretty good. The bomb bay is nicely done, and there's a lot of really cool detail here, but there are some things you should do. The two bulkheads for the bomb bay face this way, and there's no mole punch outs, and a lot of nice detail that you can detail paint. But on the back sides there are mole punch outs. This faces the radio room, and you can see the mole punch outs here. I highlighted the ones with an X that you really should sand out, and you can easily sand them out using one of these small sanding sticks. So I got this one done here, and it looks much better. You don't have to worry about the ones down here because there's a floor that glues in here, so you won't see it. On the bulkhead, which faces the cockpit, again, there are mole punch outs. This one, this one, this one, and this one. They're going to need to be carefully sanded out. And here again, I did that. On the truss framing that sits between the bulkheads right here and the bomb racks, yeah, the bomb racks kind of sit this way. But the bomb rack itself, on the bottom here, there's a mold seam line that needs to be sanded down and flattened. And on the top, there's a mold seam line that needs to be flattened. And all the framing has got these tiny petite mold lines, and you can use the tip of a number 11 X-Acto blade to carefully just scrape them out. You see how that's peeling off? And that's the mold line. So I did that on this one, and it came out pretty good. I used a sanding stick like this to flatten this out and flatten this out, and then I used, of course, the tip of a number 11 X-Acto blade to do all the fine work. And now it looks a lot better. The roof of the bomb bay has got mold punch outs, a set of them here and a set of them here. So in looking from the bottom, you're going to see these mold punch outs because they're recessed and they're pretty deep. So what I did was I used 15 thousandths by 0.188 evergreen strips, and with my handy chopper, I cut and form fitted these into place and gave them a little bit of a curve for the roof. And how I did that was I curved them around this small X-Acto knife, and that worked really, really well. And the reason why I put black lines here is I knew which way goes this way, because when you cut them, you're not going to be able to determine which side goes which, and so that made it easy to do that. And this one and this one are slightly shorter than the rest of these, so you need to keep that in mind. So yeah, worked out really, really well. The sides of the bomb bays are really nicely done. No mold punch outs on them at all. And on the bomb racks, there's mold punch outs, but you're really not going to see this because the bombs are going to be there. So the bombs are going to sit, where's the holes here? Bombs are going to sit like this. So you're not going to see those mold lines. I may sand those out right there, but you're really not going to see them. Now, the problem with the bombs, they're nicely done, except there's supposed to be a tab that comes out of this side and the other side, so that the bomb drops, this spins, and they're not on the kit. So I've got 2 old monogram kits, and I may use the bombs from the monogram kits here, but we'll see. And I may be able to find some photo etch. Edward may make some photo etch details for that, but we'll have to see. Other than that, the bombs look good. So there's 6 of them, and to put them together, and I'll use super glue to put them together after I flatten the gluing surfaces out, and then get rid of those seam lines. So yeah, it's all good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tape this together, and then I'll insert it inside the fuselage, line it up, and then I'll do a little bit of gluing so that when I pull it apart, I'll have half the parts on one bulkhead and half the parts on the other, so that I can airbrush everything. I'm not going to put the bomb racks on because I did tape this up once, and the bomb racks with the bombs can be installed after this entire thing is assembled, just like I did on the monogram B-17G. Excuse me. So let me go ahead and tape it up, and I'll show you what it looks like. I've got the fuselage put together with all the internal bulkheads, just to check the fit, make sure everything is okay. And then I put this top on, and the first thing that you're going to have to do on this top is you got to angle sand that down a little bit here and here in order to get it to fit correctly inside of the opening at the front. And you can see where it's spread a little bit of the fuselage sides right here. So I think if you look closely on this side, you can see where it's touching here, but it's not over here. And that tells me that if I sand down just a little bit at a time on this side, it will probably help close this gap. The other thing is if you push forward a little bit, that seam, this tiny boy disappears. And so when I go ahead and glue it, I'll definitely make sure that that's how I do it. I push it forward, and if I play with this a little bit, you can probably not have to do much seam work here. Now, on this side, you see how you can press down just a little bit and most of that void disappears. So what I will do is I will put a tiny, tiny drop of super glue right there and then push down on it so that it's both sides are level. Okay? I work from the center this way and then from the center this way. I want it so that if there's a void, the void is back here because it's easier to work back here than it's going to be up here. So on the other side, you've got the same problem, and you can do the same thing. You can actually close this like that. And you put a tiny drop of super glue kind of right there, close it, and just hold it. And let the super glue set. It'll take about 20 seconds, and then you can work your way forward and do that, and work your way after doing that. That will take care of most of this problem here. And then you shouldn't have to do much in the way of any sanding, because it'll look just like the rest of the engraved panel lines. I think that'll work. We'll know more when I get to it. So go ahead and pull this tape off so that I can show you the one modification that I made here. This is a really tight fit. See how I did that? And that helped a great deal getting it in place, which is, you see the difference between these two. And what I may end up doing is just sanding this off or reducing it a great deal. I don't think it provides a whole lot of structural support for this. So, and also, I don't know if these bulkhead tops come up to here or not. Everything kind of lines up okay, but you'll just have to see. And it's kind of a struggle getting it in here. So let me go ahead and I'll sand this down just a little bit at a time, form fit it, and see if that makes a difference. So get back to you in a minute. Okay, I tried sanding this down a little bit and also reducing that lip. And as I was working on that, I realized that if I try to close this up, what's going to happen is that these panel lines are not going to line up. See that? And I closed it right there. The panel lines aren't going to line up. And then that's going to look really weird. So I think what I'll do is carefully glue it in place. And then what I'll do is, that looks like about 15 thousandths there to there. And then I'll just fill it in with some evergreen strip stock, sand it down with some super glue, and we should be fine. So, yeah, I think that's the best you can do here. So it's a shame that HK did it this way. Now, on the other side of this argument, the canopy glass fits really well the way they did this. But I wish they had not done this type of engineering, because I've noticed that a lot of modelers struggle with this, and they end up losing all of this surface detail. So I'm going to see if I can do this without losing a lot of this detail and not having to do a whole lot of sanding. So, but this is instructional, and we'll just have to work around it. So once I get the fuselage together, I won't glue this area up here, because if I do, this is not going to fit. So that's my thoughts on this, and I'll just go ahead and write it right now, and I won't forget. Otherwise, I'm going to create a bigger problem. So there you have it. I'm going to go ahead and take it apart, and I've done all the fit work I need to do on the cockpit area, on the radio area, the bomb bay, and the back. I just have this area here, and then the bombardier and navigator positions. So, and then we can start painting and assembly on the fuselage.
Thanks for watching part 2, and I sincerely hope that some of the techniques that I presented to you you'll use in the construction of your HK 148 scale B-17. And stay tuned for part 3, where, as I said in the beginning, we'll focus on detailing the cockpit as well as the bombardier and navigational area. With that said, have a great evening.